I'm extremely proud to be standing here. I agree with what Brother Ken said, that this may be a very powerful and pivotal moment for the New Thought movement in terms of moving out of the paradigm of sweet, wonderful words into divine and compelling right action. It does mean there's going to be a level of uncomfortability. We cannot deny that. I see Linda sitting back there and Roger here, and they both know that Agape had its inception based on the fact that I wasn't allowed to be a minister as a black man in Orange County. A lot of things happened around that. When I began Agape, I can remember some of the criticism that began to come in my direction when we started our first feeding program. And the words back in the 80s were those with that was their consciousness. You can't go out and feed people. That's their state of consciousness. I can remember the pushback around that. I can remember the pushback when I did my first gay wedding in the 80s, and we started our LGBT ministry right after that. I can remember the pushback and the criticism. I can remember the fear that went through the conversation when we began to wholeheartedly go into the prisons and began to teach these principles to the individuals who were incarcerated, and little murmurings around, well, what if they start coming to church when they get out? And they have and they do. And then recently, of course, you met Clyde Terry, and we housed the Emerging Leaders program at Agape, in which these individuals who were either incarcerated or on their way to being incarcerated for various reasons go through an 8-week class that becomes very life-changing, and they end up coming to Agape. And so the little murmurings that happen always create a condition for magnificent and juicy and wonderful conversation about what we're really about, who we're embracing, and that all lives are precious, and that we're to leave no one behind, and to make a mighty difference on the planet. And so when I read this statement from Clyde Terry about we're not waiting for leadership to show up and we must become the body of New Thought, and when we hear ourselves complaining, I like to speak sometimes about three levels of the hierarchy of right seeing. And the first level that we know about, of course, is we see the world of appearances, the circumstances, the situations, people, places, and things, and it gives us vent to complain. And we know in our teaching, of course, that complaining is a public declaration of our inability to see the Christ, a public declaration of our inability to see solution and answers and possibilities, but many people live at that level. But as we continue to ask, let me see that which is real, we continue to ask, what is mine to do? As we continue to ask, what's trying to emerge and evolve in our consciousness, individually and collectively, we come into the second tier of seeing, in which we see the world differently. First, we see the world of appearances, and then we see the world differently. We begin to see opportunities and possibilities and places to serve. And as we continue to move into that direction of places to serve, continuing to ask the questions, what's real, what's trying to emerge, then we begin to see a different world. So first, the world of appearances, then we see the world differently, and then through our teachings, we see an absolutely different world, the new heaven and the new earth. We see the world that God sees full of divine and perfect spiritual ideas that are waiting for instrumentalities to express themselves through. I'll always remember when I was 11 years old, my mother took me to Homer's Methodist Church to see this young man by the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak. And I can remember shaking his hand at the end of the talk. And I said to my mother, his hands are really soft. And she said, baby, he does a different kind of work. I've always remembered that. And we're here to do a different kind of work. We're here to continue to engage the kind of conversations that occurred here this weekend, to find a way to see through the world of appearances and see the world differently. It's full of opportunity to serve, so that what begins to be born in us is the ability to see a brand new world. And then we ask ourselves the question, if what I'm about to say, what I'm about to do, what I'm thinking, does it represent the new world that I'm seeing and willing to be birthed? That question we have to ask ourselves. Going back to Ken, checking ourselves out on a regular basis, stumbling and falling, getting back up, stumbling, falling, getting back up, stumbling, falling, getting back up. If what I'm about to think, say, or do, does it represent the new world that I'm beginning to see? And as we ask that penetrating, soulful question to ourselves, and we then make choice is a function of expanded awareness. Without expanded awareness, you're merely a reactionary. With expanded awareness via our spiritual teachings, we have choice ability. With moment-by-moment choice, our thought, our word, and our deed will represent the new world. It will be very uncomfortable. Criticism will come in our direction. Mediocrity always attacks excellence. Old paradigm always attacks new. But you know what? Bliss is a function of the activation of our potential. And we will begin to live blissfully, not denying that there are issues. But the function of the activation of our potential will be high, and we'll live in a consciousness of bliss and ecstasy because we will be the right people, thinking the right thing, doing the right thing, and anchoring this realm of ever-expanding good, all that we have talked about on earth as it is, in the mind of the infinite, not Pollyanna, but real action. Let the criticism just walk all over us. It doesn't matter, just runs over us. We do feed. We do go into the prisons. We do house in groups like Spirit Awakening and Emerging Leaders. We do these kind of conversations on a regular basis. It is uncomfortable, but the activation of the potential that leads to bliss is way more rewarding than hanging out in the small comfort zones. And then as Reverend Wendy reminded us at the very beginning of this conference, as she was quoting Margaret Mead, that it only takes a small group of people to make a mighty difference. That's absolutely true. We have a small group of people here, but it's large relative to the percentage of individuals that are in our movement. And one with God is a majority, and individuals who are operating from a thought that's emerging from peace and love and joy is way more powerful than thousands of people who have thought forms emanating from separation. This is a powerful group. This is a powerful group. Everybody you talk to is going to be changed because of what's happened here with you. I'm proud of this movement. I'm proud of the Association of Global New Thought. I'm proud of all the movements coming together and saying, we've got to pray like lives are on the line. Let's do that now. Let's turn within for a moment. And there are lives on the line, and those lives include ours. Are we going to be the Walking Dead? There's so many movies about zombies. It's a living metaphor of individuals who are intoxicated by the news, intoxicated by fear, doubt and worry, materialism and consumerism, separation, scarcity, lack, limitation. All of these zombie movies are simply a metaphor of individuals who are sleepwalking through their life. And so we're here in this moment to wake up. To wake up to the spiritual awareness of our oneness with the presence, our oneness with the presence with each other. And to be aware that with every insight and revelation of our waking up, there comes a thought and then there comes an action. A thought, a word, and then an action. And so in this moment of clarity and sobriety and oneness, feeling our connection to the great power, the great presence, the great love, by whatever name we choose to call it today, we become increasingly available to a wisdom and a guidance and direction that compels us into right action. It compels us to right seeing and right being and right doing. That our lives shall not be lived in vain. As we look back over the arc of our existence in our human incarnation, we'll be able to say, We tried. We'll be able to say we took steps. We'll be able to say we moved out of our comfort zone. We'll be able to say we moved out of the zones of convenience. We'll be able to say that we did not inhibit the power of the universe from becoming conscious of itself as our life. The great compassion, the great kindness, the great love. We did not inhibit it. We did not suppress it from being the activity of our awareness. No, we let the God times roll. We let the peace flow. We let the joy unfold. And the old world began to crumble like the walls around Jericho when the sound was emitted. The old world begins to dissolve and disintegrate and become transmuted by a higher frequency of our knowing of the presence and the willingness to put it in action with every step that we take. Infinite Spirit, great God of the universe, how magnificent it is to be awake, aware, and alive, and to know even now, even in this instant, that God is always God. As Dr. Ernest Holmes reminded us on page 33 of his textbook, that never is there a cosmic famine. God is always God. We may stumble, but always there is that eternal voice forever whispering within our ear, that thing which causes the eternal quest, that thing which forever sings and sings. We hear it. We hear it. We listen. And we act. For this and more than words can say or ever convey, we remain grateful and thankful. And we let it be. And so it is.